fastest teams to practice today. Kyle
Casey Kane, we congratulate him, his third career pole.
It's all three Hendrick Motorsports in the front.
There's a few movers and shakers out there.
Carl Edwards free falling for a couple
to victory lane is Joey Logano.
Get the inside line on who's fast and who's last before setting your NASCAR fantasy race team lineup this weekend. This is the Inside Line on MRN.com, presented by Hercules Tires. Now, here are your fantasy experts, Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett.
Welcome to the Monster Mile version of the Inside Line. This is Robbie Mays. I'm Tyler Burnett, and we're presented by Hercules Tires. We're here to talk fantasy racing like we do each and every week. I will give you a fair warning now. One man is probably going to be talked about a lot today on the program, and that is the 6-time champion and 10-time Dover winner, Jimmie Johnson, of course, right?
I figured we'd mention him a couple of times, throughout the course of the next
We wouldn't be
half
doing
hour.
our due diligence if we did not talk about Jimmie Johnson,
Let
right?
me tell you something. If you're listening to, we've got 3 full days of coverage on MRN.com coming up for you from Dover, and I guarantee you're going to hear Jimmie Johnson's name a lot over the course of the next 3 days.
Yeah, that's right. Coming up on the show today, MRN's Kim Coon joins us. I was excited to find out she was a fantasy expert last week on the plane, so should be exciting to talk to her.
Yeah, it should definitely be a fun show. Kim's a lot of fun, and we've enjoyed having her on our broadcast the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully she's not smarter than us. So hopefully we can have a.
That's not hard for you.
I know. I beat you. I want to say this. I've beaten him 4 weeks in a row now, and it's been awesome, and I'm really excited about it. But last week, going back to Kansas, how hard was that to watch Martin Truex Jr. at the end of that race? I led 172 laps and came up short again.
Yeah, and it was hard to listen to on the radio as well because he's like something to the effect of, why are the racing gods spiting me every time we either come to Kansas or we lead an entire race like that? I mean, he led 172 laps. Like he nearly led the entire race until he had the problem on pit road. So Truex will be a good pick this weekend. I'll just throw that out there now. And I think it's ridiculous that he's dropped 50 cents on NASCAR.com. Don't you think?
I think he should be a little bit. I mean, he's 25.75 right now. So I mean, that's a pretty good high total. I mean, that's not the highest that you can get to, but it's up there. In the top third drivers. He is an A-list driver. He's in Joe Gibbs Racing equipment, basically. So I think dropping is a little excessive, but still, though, he's really expensive compared to some other drivers.
But my thing is dropping him after a week like he had. I mean, I understand he finished 13th, but he finished 50 points higher than everyone else in fantasy last week because of all the laps he led.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There
are cars that right now that are not as good as Truex that are ahead of him in money. And I know a lot of people aren't going to be happy about this one, but Dale Earnhardt Jr. is not as good as Martin Truex Jr. right now in fantasy. And he is way higher in money than Martin Truex Jr. Joey Logano is also in that mix, and there's a couple others. But Truex should get a look this week. Also, we're going to hear from Brad Keselowski today about Dover. And then, of course, we're going to listen to our fantasy teams, and then we'll pick our winners. I'm going to leave you with this before we head to the break.
Okay.
I'll explain on the other side. There is an extreme upside to not starting Jimmie Johnson this weekend. There's also an extreme downside to not starting Jimmie Johnson this weekend. After the break, I'll explain that next here on the Inside Line.
Tyler and Robbie will be right back to talk more fantasy racing here on the Inside Line.
Race on over to mrn.creekstonefarms.com now through June 8th and enter our Sizzlin' Steak Sweepstakes, where you can win a gift certificate good for $500 in Creekstone Farms premium Black Angus beef and all-natural Duroc pork. No purchase necessary, open to legal residents of the 50 United States and District of Columbia who are 21 or older at time of entry. If you want America's best Black Angus beef ribeyes, fillets, all-natural pork tenderloins, baby back ribs, and more, you've got the green light. Go to mrn.creekstonefarms.com and enter today.
O'Reilly. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts during Clean Car Month for great deals on everything you need to keep your car looking new, like Black Magic Diamond Tire Wet free after mail-in rebate. Leave your tires looking better than ever with Black Magic Diamond Tire Wet free after mail-in rebate during Clean Car Month at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limits apply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Looking for a great spot for an affordable beach vacation or the perfect romantic retreat? Let the Plaza Resort and Spa help. A vacation on the world's most famous beach is sure to help you reconnect with the ones you love. Discover the grand tradition of hospitality and service on Daytona Beach. The Plaza Resort and Spa is the perfect choice for any type of getaway. Book online at plazaresortandspa.com or call 1-855-DB-PLAZA. That's 1-855-327-5292.
Let's talk more fantasy racing on The Inside Line. Here's Robbie and Tyler.
Practice is coming up in just under an hour here on MRN.com. MRN will be live with pole qualifying this afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Those are prime time moments, Robbie, to pick your fantasy team. I mean, Martin Truex Jr., like we were just talking about in the first break, he was fastest in race trim and both practices. He was good in qualifying. Of course, he won the pole. At that point, when you know that guy is that fast, you have to start him. So these are picks that we are making ahead of the weekend. We haven't seen a car on the track yet.
Correct.
Right?
The cars are still being unloaded right now when we make our picks. So we're going based off of history, a lot of good stats, and of course, as always, every stat that we talk about on the show you can get at the Race Center at MRN.com.
One of the ways we've gone about picking our fantasy team over the past couple of years is driver rating. We have Mike Ford on. He's all about loop data and stuff like that. Well, Jimmy Johnson should have a plaque that says we'll always have the highest driver rating at Dover because he had a 150, I think it was in 2009, where he led 298 laps to the 400, and he started 8th and won the race. His average driver rating is 120, which is still way higher than anyone else. I teased before the break that Jimmy Johnson could potentially be a good non-start this weekend for someone, and here's why. Because everyone, including me and Robbie, will have Jimmy Johnson on your team, on their team this weekend in fantasy.
Yeah.
That's correct? That's pretty accurate to say?
I would say so.
If you don't start Jimmy Johnson and he wrecks, you automatically have an advantage over everyone else in your fantasy league. Though you have to make good picks, to work around that, and the rest of your team have to be good. But that could potentially be 100 to 200 point swing right there if Jimmy Johnson either goes out and gets 200 points or goes out and gets 0 points. Well, if you don't start Jimmy Johnson and everyone else does, and he goes out and does what he's done for the past 11 years, then most likely you won't even come close to sniffing the top of the fantasy league this week. So it's a risk-reward type deal with Jimmy Johnson. So as I say that, do you have Jimmy Johnson this week?
I do have Jimmy Johnson on my team. I'm taking the risk on Jimmy Johnson because in the last 10 races, aside from the mechanical problem he had last fall, he finished 41st, knocked him out of the chase. His other worst finish in the last 10 races was 17th. Jimmy Johnson is the man at this racetrack. Most wins, almost 3,000 laps led. He just has to lead one lap on Sunday to get to 3,000 laps led. But you look at the great drivers in this sport, Pearson, Petty, Earnhardt. Those guys dominated this racetrack in their eras. But Jimmy Johnson is on pace to do better than any of those guys did, and all those guys are in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So I'm taking Jimmy Johnson every time I go to Dover. In the 4 years that I've been doing this show, I've had Jimmy Johnson on my team every weekend at Dover.
No matter if he has the potential to do what happened last fall.
Because I know he has the potential to win every time we go there.
Yes, he does. And just like Harvick does at Phoenix.
Correct.
That's why one of us not picking Harvick at Phoenix would have been absolutely crazy.
Exactly, yeah.
But I will say this, the last 3 races, though Jimmy Johnson, in the past 11 years has led a lot of laps when we come to Dover, the last 3 races he's only led, I think, a combined 29 laps. And that the 29 that he did lead was in this race last year when he won the race. He of course, finished 41st in the fall and then 3rd in the spring, a year ago. So Jimmy Johnson is on my team as well, and he's also on your team. Another guy I have on my team we talked about in the first segment, a little bit, and that's Martin Truex Jr. Again, just the price drop really kind of made me mad, to be honest, because right now, Robbie, would you say he's the early favorite to win the Coke 600? The way that they ran at the mile-and-a-half racetrack, the way they ran last year at Charlotte, he almost won that race at Charlotte. He almost won Kansas, and he almost won Charlotte.
Yeah.
He's got to be an early favorite going into the Coke 600, wouldn't you think?
I mentioned he's running Gibbs equipment, basically, and they're the strongest team in the sport right now. So, yeah, I think Truex will be a good pick for the 600. I also think he would be a good pick for this weekend, and I've also got him on my team this weekend. Won his first career race here at Dover back in the spring of 2007. As far as top 10s are concerned, this is Martin Truex Jr.'s second best successful racetrack. He's got 9 top 10s here. Only the other racetrack he has more top 10s is Texas Motor Speedway.
He had 2 top 5s last year, too.
Yeah.
He finished 5th in both races. So Truex would be a good pick this weekend. I agree with you. He's on my team.
I'll tell you this. They've got the car running where they need to go, where they needed to run. They're going to fix the mistakes. A couple of years ago when Kevin Harvick moved over to Stewart-Haas Racing, they had fast race cars every week, but they kept having problems. And once they figured those problems out, once they solved their problems, they won the championship. I feel the same way about Martin Truex Jr. now. I think once they get their problems figured out on pit road or mechanical or whatever it is, they're going to be in contention to win a lot of races.
Mark it down now. Charlotte and Pocono, 2 tracks that Martin Truex Jr. could potentially win on moving forward. He won at Pocono last year, this time of year, and he almost won at Charlotte during the Coke 600. You mentioned Kevin Harvick. He's on my team. He should get a look this week on most of your fantasy teams. Again, this is before practice. We found out last year that he can dominate this race pretty easily, and he did that in the fall. He also finished second in this race to Jimmy Johnson last year. So a first and a second last year for Kevin Harvick, another guy who could potentially go out and dominate this race. If you don't start him, that could be a big mistake for your fantasy team.
Well, I'm not going to start him. I don't have any money left for Kevin Harvick because I want this guy, Chase Elliott. I've got to have Chase Elliott. He's $1.75 more now than what I picked him up at a few weeks ago. Making his first start here in the Sprint Cup Series. The top 5s are happening more and more. The top 10s are easy now. The top 5s are coming up soon. And the win is right around the corner with this guy. So I've got Chase Elliott. Austin Dillon is also on my team again this weekend. I debated here a little bit because there's a lot of guys in the price range of Austin Dillon that could also be pretty good contenders, like a Kyle Larson, like a Jamie McMurray or Clint Boyer, and I'm rounding out my team with Chris Buescher.
Austin Dillon and Chase Elliott, man, do those guys know how to close out races.
They really do.
Last week, they weren't even close to the top 15, top 10, and they're both come out with top 10s.
They're just getting better as we go along.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is on my team. Decent performance last week. He finished 13th. He's another guy who's slipping in price, so he's getting lower, but I think their performance is up there to where they're at right now at $13.25. Tracks sort of like Bristol. He finished 8th in the fall, did Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and you know he's good at Bristol, so Ricky's on my team. Also, Matt DiBenedetto. We saw what he did at Bristol, though it's not the same racetrack. It's concrete, just like Bristol, and we'll see if Matt can finish in the top 30 or the top 25. It's pretty safe to say he could probably finish in the top 30. Those are our teams. Kim Coon is next here on the Inside Line.
We'll be right back in just a moment to talk more fantasy racing with Tyler and Robbie here on the Inside Line.
The Toyota racing team was born out of true American tradition. We've racked up 332 NASCAR wins. That's a whole lot of victory laps. Just last year, Toyota racing driver Kyle Busch took home the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series championship. We even have Toyota drivers racing Tundras in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. But winning isn't our only tradition. Toyota has been in North America for almost 60 years. We have 10 Toyota assembly plants scattered throughout the United States. Those plants produce 9 of our models right here, including the Camry, Tacoma, and Tundra. In 2014, a total of 1.3 million Toyota vehicles were assembled here in America. That's a lot of cars. The production of all those vehicles has created thousands of American jobs. That's a lot of opportunities. Opportunities that we'd like to keep going for years to come. So let's go, America. Let's go, NASCAR. Let's go places. Head on over to toyotaracing.com to find more info on our drivers. NASCAR is a registered trademark of the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, Inc.
Are you ready?
To help children forget about their serious medical conditions so they can just be a kid. Then support Victory Junction, which is the dream of late race driver Adam Petty, who wanted to build a camp where children concentrate on fun and laughter, not illness or disability. At Victory Junction, kids enjoy ziplining, horseback riding, swimming, fishing, all in a medically safe environment, all at no cost to the camper. What do you say, Richard Petty?
Let's do this.
Learn more at victoryjunction.org.
We now return to the Inside Line with Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett.
1,032 people are playing in our NASCAR.com Fantasy Live League. Thanks to Denny Hamlin last week, most of them beat me.
Thanks to a lot of people last week, most of them beat you.
I was just saying that because Logano, of course I had to jinx him because he had 5 straight top 5s at Kansas, and then he was involved in that wreck there in turns 3 and 4 in front of Bagman. So what a mess that was.
That was strange. Anyway.
Well, we're joined now by Kim Coon, who is MRN pit reporter. You can hear her on NASCAR Live Race Day on the weekends, hosting this weekend with Kyle Rickey, and we'll hear her one-on-one that we hear each and every week. Kimmy, how are you?
Doing well. I don't know what I did to deserve the honors of choosing fantasy this week, but happy to be joining y'all.
Well, I'll tell you why, because I was excited to hear on the plane that you play fantasy or once played fantasy. I'm not sure which one it is now. So I'll just say sorry that we sucked you into it. But we all know you are smart. There's no question about that. You're on almost every practice, every qualifying session that we have on MRN.com, and also all the races. So you know who's fast in the garage right now. Going to Dover, who's the guy that you have to have on your fantasy team, in your opinion?
Well, I think the guy you have to have is Jimmy Johnson. I mean, he is a knockout when we come to Dover. And the tricky thing about Dover is I don't feel like there's any track that we can compare it to. It's a fast, high-banked, 1-mile concrete track. So really, you can't look at other tracks throughout the schedule and be like, well, this driver performs well here, so that's going to mean he's going to perform well at Dover. So you really can only look at Dover and who does well at Dover, I think, to make your fantasy lineup. And Johnson is the class of the field. 10 wins at Dover there, most wins all time. So if you don't have Johnson on your fantasy team, you're out to lunch. I don't know what you're thinking.
You're out to lunch. I love that.
Well, Kim, we talked about this in the last segment before you joined us. Jimmy finished 41st last fall. It was a mechanical problem. Tyler thinks that if you
I'm
take
not saying
him,
I'm not starting it. I'm saying if you don't start him and he wrecks, then you have a massive advantage over the fantasy field. But most likely he's not going to wreck, right?
Yeah, I think that was a one-off. I mean, he's won 3 of the last 5 races there. So just looking at that alone, I don't think you can look at that mechanical failure and automatically question whether or not to have him on your team.
Right.
I think that was a one-off,
I agree.
bad luck deal. I don't think it's a trend.
Right.
Kim, let's move on to more Hendrick Motorsports drivers. We've already talked about Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's up and down at this racetrack a lot. Casey Kane is struggled here in recent years, but Chase Elliott is the guy that is the hot shoe right now in the Sprint Cup Series, 7 top 10s and 11 starts. Would you consider starting Chase Elliott this weekend at Dover?
I would. I'm not going to start him on my team, but the thing is he is hot, but he's making his first Dover Cup start. And, again, there's not really any other track you can compare it to. I mean, his best finish in the Sprint Cup Series is at Bristol. That is another shorter track, high-banked, but it's not comparable, I don't think, to Dover. He does have some experience there in the Xfinity Series, and I think 1 truck start. I do think there's potential that his kind of hot streak could follow him to Dover, but I don't think it's a guarantee for Chase there just because this track is so different and he is making his first Cup start.
I completely agree with you about it's not comparable because Carl Edwards has gotten the label, and I don't know where it comes from, as Concrete Carl.
Because he won a lot of races on concrete.
He hasn't been that great at Dover.
I know.
And, in the last 10 races, he's only finished in the top 5 twice, and then he hasn't even finished in the top 10 other than those 2 races. So, Carl Edwards, what do you think of Joe Gibbs this weekend and the chances for Carl Edwards, Kimmy?
In terms of Gibbs in general, I don't think we're going to see the dominance from the entire Gibbs camp and to extend that to Truex too, because he's kind of a satellite team of them. You're not going to see all 5 of those cars, I don't think, running, in the top 5 like we've seen at other tracks, because this track is trickier. It eats cars up. You really have to be on your game the entire race. So I think it's going to be harder for that camp to be running, in the top 5. All those cars are the top 10 for the majority of the race. With that being said, Kyle Busch is a guy that's on my team. I think out of the entire JGR camp, he's the one that could get it done. It doesn't matter what type of track that we go to. This guy just knows how to win. He's won 3 races, and we're only 11 races into the season. That's something crazy like, I can't do the math that fast, 27% maybe. So, I don't think we're going to see overall dominance from the JGR group, but I do think there will be a couple standouts.
And Toyota hasn't won a race at Dover since 2010 with Kyle Busch. So that's a long time, Robbie Mays. Six years, right? Am I doing the math right?
Yeah, that's 6 years. Kim, you mentioned Kyle Busch. You mentioned Jimmy Johnson. Who are some other starters you may look at this weekend at Dover?
Well, if we're looking at top-tier teams, Truex is going to be in my lineup too. Since the beginning of last year, he's led in half a dozen races, I think, although he only has, 1 win to his credit. And last year, if you look at this race, Truex led 131 laps. He just couldn't get it done. So I think he's been chomping at the bit. Last week it was such a heartbreaker to see him lead I think it was 172 laps at Kansas, and then he had, a parts failure type deal. And so I think, when we come to Dover, Truex is a guy that we always talk about, 9 Dover top 10s, including 3 of the last 4 races. He got his first ever Sprint Cup Series win here, so it's a special place for him. So he's definitely on my list as well.
All right, how about a B pick, the B category, or C picks in some of the lower tier teams?
Yeah, B pick, I'm going to go with Larson. It's his 3rd season in the Sprint Cup Series. I don't think there are a lot of tracks that you can look at in the Sprint Cup Series and say Larson's consistent at. But Dover is one of those. In 4 races, he's had 3 top 10s, and then he finished 11th in the 4th race. So it's one of his best tracks. And if we go and look at, last year's races, he finished in the top 6 at both Dovers. So again, for it being, his 3rd full-time season in the Sprint Cup Series, there's not a lot of tracks where we can say Larson's definitely going to be, running in the top 5 or 10. This is a track where we can say that. Yeah, and
he ran well last week, too, before he got caught up in the Denny Hamlin crash. And I know on the radio he wasn't too happy about that.
Yeah. It's not just Larson. His teammate at Ganassi Racing, Jamie McMurray, also finished in the top 10 at both races at Dover last year. Kim, if you're looking for more wild card picks, would you consider McMurray? Also, Clint Boyers is run historically well at Dover as well.
Wild card, yeah, I would definitely throw McMurray in there. I think in general the CDR cars are going to be good at Dover. This potentially is a track and a race this weekend where they could turn their season around. We haven't seen the consistency from that team like we saw last year. At one point in the season, we were talking about both those cars potentially making the chase, although that didn't happen and only McMurray did. I do think that this is, again, potentially a weekend where both of those drivers, both of those cars could shine and potentially, again, get top 10s for both McMurray and Larson. Boyer's kind of a risk in general this season just because I don't feel like his heart's 100% in it. And, it's not all about that, but, if you have a driver that's kind of lackadaisical behind the wheel, you're not going to get the consistency. So for me, it would be a big gamble to put Boyer on my fantasy team, regardless of his record there.
So your team looks Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, and I think you told me Chris Buescher to round out your team in your top 5. How about your winner this weekend?
Winner, it's got to be Kyle Busch, and I'm going to dip into my team for that choice. Again, it doesn't matter what kind of racetrack we're at. This guy knows how to win. His last 11 wins have come at different tracks. So I think you can add, Dover as a 12th different type of track in his last 12 wins if you were to get a win this weekend. And, again, he's on fire. I think he's going to be the one to take the checkered flag this weekend.
All right, Kimmy, thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you this weekend and have some fun on the radio.
Sounds good.
All right, Kim Coon, everyone, joining us.
That's good
some
stuff.
Good content from her about fantasy teams and her winners, of course. Her pick going the Joe Gibbs route with Kyle Busch, and that would be their first win at Dover since 2010. Actually, his first win because he was the last one to win for Toyota. So interesting there, Robbie.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, we'll head to the final break, and we'll come back, pick our winners next here on the Inside Line.
The Inside Line will return in just a moment.
Whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules Tires will get you there, whether you're running on dirt or running a job. Our dependable, high-quality tires are the perfect fit for your needs. For unmatched value, selection, and warranty with industry-leading road hazard protection, there's only one choice: Hercules Tires. To learn more, visit HerculesTire.com or call 800-677-9535. Hercules Tires, right on our strength.
O'Reilly.
Restore lost fuel economy and eliminate rough idle with Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner. Right now at O'Reilly Auto Parts, buy 2 bottles of Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner and get 1 free. Clean clogged injectors and increase fuel efficiency with Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner. Buy 2, get 1 free at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limit supply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Race fans, you know there's nothing like the power, excitement, and sounds of NASCAR. Ever wonder what it would be like to strap yourself in the seat of an authentic NASCAR race car? You can do it at the Richard Petty Driving Experience. Ride along or drive yourself at one of 15 tracks nationwide. Call 1-800-237-3889 or visit online at drivepetty.com. Richard Petty Driving Experience. It's authentic NASCAR entertainment. Call 1-800-237-3889 or visit drivepetty.com to reserve your experience.
Now it's back to Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett on the Inside Line.
When we were kind of running through the list of tracks for lone downforce, there were a few where I think everyone probably said we would be okay if we left the rules the way they were in 15, and maybe Bristol, Martinsville, and Richmond, those type of places came up from time to time, and I would probably add Dover to that list. The cars were already pretty sideways there, but I don't think it's a bad thing. You're going to have to really drive them sideways again at Dover this year, even more. And I think that could make the race even better, so it ought to be something.
The voice of Brad Keselowski talking about how he thinks they shouldn't have changed the rules at Dover because they were already sideways enough. Well, we're going to be in
we're
for
going
a
to be
treat
more sideways than we were before
this weekend.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, Keselowski has a win in the last 10 races and also 2 second-place finishes at Dover. So, Robbie, I know your winner right now is either to be determined or something.
Well,
could Brad Keselowski be a potential pick?
Let's go ahead and get your winner out of the way. Who are you going to pick as your winner?
Just for the sake of this credibility of this show,
okay,
Jimmy Johnson
okay,
is my winner this weekend.
Okay, I'll take the field.
I think he's going to get his 11th, Monster of the Miles trophy. You're going to take the field?
I'll take the field over Jimmy Johnson. No, we talked about a lot of guys. I like Kim's pick of Kyle Busch. I also think Carl Edwards is going to be good this weekend as well. But I'm going to stick with Kim. I'm going to go with the Kyle Busch route.
Wow.
Yeah, well, he wins. When he's good, he's good. When he's not good, he struggles a little bit. But, aside from the spring race last year where he came back and he crashed, he's got 4 top 10s in the last 5 races here, so I like Kyle Busch to win this weekend at Dover.
I can't believe, Kevin Harvick. I mean, he nearly dominated both of the races last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that couldn't be a potential winner?
I think he could be a potential winner, but he's not my potential winner.
Okay.
So.
Jimmy Johnson and then dual Kyle Bushes for your fantasy teams this weekend. Coming up today, here in about half an hour, Sprint Cup Series practice at 11. Sprint Cup Series qualifying at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The Camping World Truck Series Dover 200. I love to see the trucks at Dover. Saturday, we'll have more practices, and then we'll also have the Xfinity race, the Bargain Outlet 200, and then, of course, the AAA 400 Drive for Autism at 1 p.m. Sunday. Hopefully you join us for NASCAR Live Race Day. For our producer, Daryl Smith, Robbie Mays throwing up all the graphics, I'm Tyler Burnett. Hopefully you have a great fantasy week this week, and pick Jimmy Johnson, will you?
You've been listening to The Inside Line, presented by Hercules Tires. Stream us every Friday on MotorRacingNetwork.com or on the MRN app. The Inside Line is also available on demand at the MRN.com Media Center, or download it through iTunes or Stitcher. The Inside Line is a production of the Motor Racing Network.